No.
You remember that leaflet?
Yeah, I remember that
He had
very
chain
much.
beer, Coke, and Pepsi.
Stop.
That's what the injunction down there. This gang there. The gang was getting too big for them, and we was getting more of them in. More in the union every day, and they had to do something. And they just filed that bill of injunction there against us. So that threw us on a committee there. Lucille was on it, Jimmy Monroe was on it, Belt Jones, not Belt, but Austin Jones was on it.
Yeah.
Mac Mahan was on it there. Mac Mahan, him and Jesse come back and scabbed on us.
Yeah.
They stayed out about a week.
And Jimmy Monroe was
Jimmy Monroe was
Jimmy
good.
Monroe was good. He was very good.
Let me ask
It's not
Homer
working
about
for me
this.
down here.
Homer, does he?
I don't.
Okay.
Are we ready? Okay, Homer, what in their picture, what does it remind you of?
Well, it reminds me about the time, if I can remember right, it's about the time when the chief of police come down and told us to move on. If I can remember about right. As I say, it's been so long, but we had to move over on this side. There was a bank here, and we just milled around in the street as far as I remember.
Was the strike, do you think it was a festive atmosphere, or were people really frightened because they were already near starvation?
I think the management and the police was more excited than we were, because we didn't intend to harm anyone. I don't think that was in our mind. We just didn't want, I guess at that time, we just didn't want somebody else going in there taking our job. Because if we felt like someone, which they did, come in and take your job, we might have had some fight, but if the tempers on the picket line, I don't know, somebody might have hollered something, but I don't remember exactly.
Lucille, when this picture came out of the papers, what did people say to you?
Oh,
Just say when that picture came out.
when that picture came out, we had a lot of criticism. That was one of the things that started the criticism from the churches and from other people, and wanting to know, why don't you go back? Why are you quitting your job? And your family needs the money and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there was a lot of talk about that picture.
Did you know you had been blacklisted?
Not at that time. Not then we didn't. Because see, the mill was completely closed down. You remember that, Foots? It was completely closed.
We didn't get a blacklist
After the
nationwide strike.
after the nationwide strike
Yeah,
was when we got the blacklist, because the mill didn't open. And I think one of the reasons that it didn't, well, all the people were out. We were all out, so they didn't have anybody to operate with. But you must remember, as uneducated as we were, so far as union was concerned, management was the same way. And they were afraid of us, like Foote said, they were afraid of us. You know, they didn't know what we were going to do with that strong backing.
What did you think of these pictures when they called you the beautiful Miss Thornburgh, the debutante? Did you feel like that was a compliment or belittling you as a leader of the strike?
I think they might have put it in there because I was certainly no beautiful girl, was maybe to discourage me. If it was, it didn't work.
In what way would it discourage you?
Well, maybe they thought that I was stupid enough to think that I was a pretty girl and I shouldn't be on a picket line. I should be somewhere else, anywhere else.
Do you think any of the strikers or the other leaders of the local felt that way toward you?
No, they didn't pay that much attention to it. No, they didn't care. And that came out of a Philadelphia paper.
And here's another picture of Lucille.
That picture there is something more like her back then. I could see her through the glass doors there. It was sort of on a platform. There's one step going into her office there. And the first time I'd seen her, I went in there with Dolphin. My aunt was working there on the reels. Winders, they call them winders. They come in reels, they did. But my aunt was working there, my mother's sister. Lucille knew her. And The first time I walked in there, I told her, I said, can I leave my lunch in here? So I said, they're eating it up. I ain't got nothing to eat for lunch.
We stole each other's lunch.
Yeah, well, there was one guy down there I caught, and I collared him. He ruined my lunch. He'd already got the meat out of it, and my aunt was packing my lunch, and I got a meat sandwich, I got a jelly sandwich, I got one with butter in between it, and a little piece of cake for my lunch, and it was wrapped up in newspaper. And they was breaking in that there and tearing that string open and just ruining my lunch, taking that meat out of there, and that made me mad. And I caught him at it, and it was too bad.
Do you remember Foots as being having a little bit of a temper and being a firebrand? What did he sound like on the picket line?
He sounded like he yelled louder than anybody else. You know, we hollered, don't scab, don't go back in, stand by the Union and all that stuff. He was a little louder than the others.
Could you tell us about your singing on the picket line?
Oh yeah, we sang on the picket line. We got our songs too. We was talking about Miles Horton and Highlander a while ago. Miles gave us the songs. He gave us the songs that we had. That Solidarity Forever, I think, was one of the main ones.
Well, thou shalt not be moved, one I remember.
That's good, yeah. We shall not be moved.
Yeah.
We used that one.
That was an old song there out of a songbook, Christian songbook there. Well, so thou shalt not be moved. That comes out of the Bible too. Comes out of Psalms.
Do you
I read the Bible a whole lot of times.
Do you think that the picket line and the strike actually was a part of the education of the people about the Union? Do you think this was a chance for people to really understand the Union and to know what the Union was for?
Yes, it was a good time for that. But when people were as poor as we were, and with nothing to eat and not knowing where the rent is coming from, it was pretty hard to teach them anything except just plain economics. How are you going to get your next meal? But I do think we all got a lot of education out of it, didn't you, Foots?
Yeah, it educated me all right, darn right.
Me too.
Well, how did you feel when you lost your Union?
I learned how to get out there and sweat and make it with the sweat of my brow, and I did it too. If somebody asked me could I do something, I could do it.
Well, when you worked so hard to get your Union and you had it in infancy to 100%, you go out on strike because the leadership, Gorman, said that we really need to do this, even though you felt like it was bad timing. How did it make you feel when you lost your Union?
Oh, what made me feel so good? Getting a job without a cotton mill. Oscar Dunn, a contractor in Knoxville, he helped the Union together, carpenters local. A week, $2.40 a day. That's all you could make. Well, the cloth they were making over there was checks, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter what you took off your looms, because you could take a piece of it and line a raincoat with it.
What do you think is the lesson? How would you like for this strike to be looked at by young people who are just hearing about it?
They've got a lot clearer picture of the Union now than they had back then. They've got benefits in there. Join the Union. I say join the Union. The young man should be in the Union. get them benefits. He's got the second pension there coming besides Social Security. Social Security is not supposed to be the everything that we thought it would be. A lot of people misled there. It's just a helpmate there. And
Did you think that the strike was a disaster?
well, the nationwide strike didn't help any. Let's say it didn't help any. What do you think about it, Lucille?
I think a sad thing about all of it was, and of course, I keep going over this, how uneducated we were, but I didn't realize it until later when I started really talking to organizers and working in the labor movement myself, how very important it was to save your union. I remember people like Franz Daniels and Miles Horton and people like that. When it gets right down to a real showdown, compromise if you have to in order to save your union. Well, if we could have saved that union, we couldn't. There was no way we could save it. But if we had it to do over, you know, and what I would tell people now would be to have your people better educated and knowing what they were doing before they would come out on strike. I think now that we might have even avoided that strike and saved our union for another day. But the way it was, we lost everything. I think it was a very untimely strike. And I think it left the people, well, a lot of them, and I'm sure you and Homer both would agree with me on this, I think it left a lot of the people completely disillusioned. Because they could say, and they did, say around Knoxville, well, look what happened to Cherokee. They didn't win down there, and they had everybody organized. They didn't win. So we were a bad influence on other mill workers in Knoxville. It was really a sad situation.
Were you proud of what you did?
Yes, I'd like to do it all over again, but I'd do it a little differently.
Could you say, I was proud of it, yes? Repeat, say, I was proud of what I did, but.
I was proud of what I did, but I would do it a little bit differently this time.
Well, let me ask you something. I've seen, as you know, in working with the union, I've seen a lot of people go through organizing campaigns and strikes where they've lost. But there's something that they gain in the process of standing up to a company or to injustice. Do you think that took place in this strike? Did you see some things that you gained from it? Did it change you, Homer?
Well, when I think back, it changed me in a lot of ways. To use my own mind and to do, I've always done what I said I would do. I was taught that in my life, to always do, if you make an oath, you do it. But I think I would use my own mind, but in our strike, I think our biggest trouble, we didn't know really what was going on.
That's right.
Because it's just like going to school. You got to be educated, and we weren't, because we didn't know much about strikes. We didn't know much about staying together, pulling together, and I think you've got to be taught to do that.
But you did it. Y'all did
Oh, well, we have that trouble today, though. I know I'm trying to get our bus drivers together when I was in the school system. But it's impossible because you can't get them together. That's what you got to do.
If there are a lot of young people today, and times are as hard in some ways as they were back then, in terms of people being scared they're going to lose their jobs because a plant will close down and move overseas, and they're fighting to maintain their unions, they're fighting for wages, they're fighting for respect on the job. From your experience in this strike, what could you say to some of those young people that are in the middle of fighting to save a pension, or fighting in the coal mines to make sure that pensions aren't cut out from under coal miners? What does this strike experience have to say to them?
What I really think, to see the young people today, they would come and take your job. If I was to go out on a strike today, to what I could see through life, I'm a union man, and this guy over here is out of work. Half the time they don't respect their parents, so they're not going to respect the union, and they're not going to pay any attention to you walking that picket line. They'll just walk right on by you.
Do you think that in your experience, the fact that you had a family in the plant and everybody stuck together, is that something that you think would help if young people understood that?
That would be the only way, as I say, they would have to be educated to know what the union was really all about, because there's so many people in the South that don't know. But now there's several places in Knoxville that are union, but it's hard for them to keep the guys together.
What would you say about that, Lucille?
I think what we could tell the younger people about that would be that, well, look at us back there under. Excuse me.
Let's start again.
Okay. See what I say.
Ask your question again.
Lucille.
Yes.
If you can just picture with me, and you know them just as well as I do, these places where the local is under fire, and these kids are going to lose their local, and they haven't been tested like y'all were tested in forming the local, but they're fighting to save the pension for the pensioners, they're fighting to save their union, they're fighting to save their plant, and they're scared to death that they're not even going to be afford to keep their home. What could you say to young people today from your experience? What can they learn from your strike?
Well, I think they could. I think they could learn that there is more solidarity. We didn't expect when we came out on strike. We didn't expect everybody to come out with us, but there is more solidarity among workers even now, I think, than the people realize that there is. And you talk to them, I would tell them that had we saved our union, I would certainly tell them that. I would certainly tell them to save your union, whatever else you do. But now they have so many places to go, so many things that, back when we were on strike, there was no Social Security. We didn't have a labor board that was worth anything. They finally had one. We didn't have all those places to go. And I still go back to that, educating the membership. You just have to do that and prove to them that in unity there's strength.
Now, Lucille,
That one couldn't do that.
We could ask her about the pamphlet, the
I was
flyer.
going to ask Foots that question. Don't we want to get his
Sure.
answer?
Okay, good.
Foots, what would you say to some of these young people today who are losing heart and scared to strike and scared of uncertain times about keeping their job? What have you learned, or what did you learn your whole time in the textile mill?
Well, I would tell them to be truthful. The main thing is to be truthful about the whole situation. They catch in a lie, you can't lie out of a lie. You tell them the truth, you can always follow the truth. You've got the truth there. I'd tell them it's a hard job out there on the strike. But you've started it, don't quit. Stay right in there and keep fighting. You can win if you'll keep fighting. But it takes time. Now, I've worked around the union from Brookside 1921. We had it going down there fine. I've seen it happen down there. It was done away with down there. There was a certain amount of people that didn't like us, but we could have made them like us if we'd have won down there. We got them on our side.
What did the union do for you as a young worker?
As a young worker, it made a believer out of me to sell my labor at the highest price I could. If I couldn't sell my labor at a higher price, the union wouldn't be no good to me. That's what a union's all about, is to sell your labor there. Get all you can out of it.
Did you feel like you could stand taller when you had a union?
Yes, I could stand and fight and fight and fight. If I
You
had
did.
3 persons to stay with me, I would have a team there with the 4 horsemen.
And what did you learn about the fact that you were able to organize these workers?
Well,
Did that surprise you? What would you say to young people when they say, "Oh, we can't get these people to organize a union. They're not interested in a
you
union."
get out there and tell them that you're for the union. Tell them what the union's all about. I try to educate the kid before he went out into the field to talk to him, like boot camp in the Army. You want to make him a little bit rougher, and you want to get some friends working. Now, you want friendship. You don't want an enemy. You want friendship there. When you go to talk to them, try to make a friend there out of them. You make a friend out of them, then you got a friend the rest of your life. If you get out there in the union and take him in the union if you can. If you belong to the union, take him in the union. Get him in there and get him a card. I was proud of my card. I was proud of it. It made me feel good to say that I'm a union man. That was 1945. I was getting old. 1945 after the war. And they come to me out there in my neighborhood, said I was making a fool out of the labor out here. You're paying them too much for it. I said, I'm paying union wage. $1 an hour for labor.
Did people look down on people who worked in the textile mill?
Yes, we was looked down on in a certain way. It was the cheapest paying job there was. And it got farmers in there, as he said a while ago. Farmers' kids. Yes, they was running it. But what did they coming across over here when we first started this country? They was all farmers back then, or game men. They didn't have anything to eat, so what? We didn't bring anything into this world, but we can make a better place for our kids if we just work at it.
As a textile worker, when you felt like people looked at you as the lowest paid people that were working in the factories,
Yes, we was.
when you went on that strike, do you feel like it made people feel like they had shown the community something about
it
textile
did.
workers?
We had just a little bit of pride there on us. We built a pride up there, but we had better going.
Okay, Lucille,
Yeah.
could ask Lucille this question.
Lucille, I know that people call textile workers hands.
No, they called us lint heads. Lint heads. And you know where we got that name? When I would come out of the mill, my hair was completely covered in lint. And that's where we got that name, lint head. We went from lint head to cotton mill hands. And then from cotton mill hands, we got us a nice title, textile workers.
And what do you think? Did the strike change people's feelings about themselves and the community's respect for textile workers?
I think it did in some areas. I think the real knowing and thinking people saw in us that, well, they have a determination to do better. They don't want to be cotton mill workers on these low wages forever. And I think we gained a certain amount of respect from him.
Do you think on the issues, there were the national issues, which were mainly about the NRA codes,
Yeah.
but your local issues, the issues that made people unhappy in the plant, like your ventilation,
Yeah.
water fountains.
Working
What
conditions.
were the working conditions that people were unhappy about? What made them so unhappy that they would come out on this strike?
Well, one thing, of course, was the wages. When you stand on your feet like I did, 10 hours, 5 nights a week, and you get $8.40 for it, you're mad first about the wages. And of course, everybody knows that 10 hours is too long to work, particularly when you're standing right there in front of a machine. And then the working conditions. You remember how big that spinning and winding room was. You know, it was all together there. We had one little restroom with one toilet seat in it. There was one water fountain that was stopped up more times than it was working. And it was working conditions like that. And it was so hot. I went to work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to work on that night shift. And in the summer, that it was so hot in there. And the mill you didn't really, on any night during the summer, get cool until midnight. And you couldn't open the window because it would blow the cotton into your machine. And it was just suffocating. And we had a lot of people that did faint there. I guess you had those in the weave shop too. It was so hot in there.
Do you think this is something that motivated people to walk out with you and to form a union?
Oh, definitely. Working under the working conditions that we did, and for the low wages that we did.
People were just fed up.
They were just fed up with it. That's right.
Well, you know, when I hear you talk about this, I'm just amazed that you, number one, were able to get 100% union. Number two, you were able to build your strike like you did. And it's hard for me to look at it as a disaster. I mean, what would you say to young people about standing up against conditions in the mill where they are in danger of their lives?
Oh, I would definitely tell them to do it. Even if the strike was a disaster, we proved something to ourselves that you know that we could come out, and we felt pretty proud of ourselves when we shut that mill down. You know, now look at us, you rich people have been calling us lint heads. We powerful enough to shut your mill down. You know, yeah, we was proud of it.
Did you feel that way, Homer?
Well, I guess I have a different outlook maybe
You was
than they
too
did.
young, anyway.
But
Did you feel proud that y'all had shut the mill down?
I feel proud that I've always stood tall, tried to stand tall, whatever I do. And when we went out, I had an obligation to the union, and I done that. And as far as I don't remember, I remember back when I was a filling boy, back when they were cutting 10%, that kind of stuff, that I worked 13 hours a night for $6 a quarter. But I was glad to get the $6 a quarter because I had to eat. But then when they come along and cut the night shift off, then when I went back, the working conditions to me were better because I was making $25, $30 a week. And of course, that was big money.
Uh-huh.
As I say, I know what Lucille was talking about in the spinning room was so much difference in the weave room. Her working conditions was bad. They stood right there in front of that machine. And we had to go from here to there, running a set of looms. And, you know, we didn't stand still. And, but if I was going to go back in the union, I'd still do what I said I'd do, regardless. If I lost my job, which I didn't know that I was on a blacklist, and then I didn't know it till the other day. But I went back in the Cherokee, and they treated me as nothing ever happened. Of course, I've done my work. I run my job, and the bosses ever said, as long as I was on that job, maybe I wouldn't see a boss all night, on the 8 hours.
Let me ask you now, if you will, look at that leaflet. And Lucille, you went to the convention where the National Union told you about the strike.
Mm-hmm.
Was that drawn up by the National Union?
Yes, uh-huh.
Do you remember this leaflet here, Foots? Do you remember this leaflet that y'all
Well,
passed out?
yes, I got a hold of 500 of them to chase you out. I put 500 of them out. I'm very well acquainted with that poster there. It's a good poster, and it means a lot
We
to
put
me.
them in. If you remember, Foots, we put them indoors whether there was any union worker there or not, just to let the whole community know that there's a strike on. We had
Stick them under doors, any place. It didn't matter. Stick them in mailboxes. It didn't matter.
Were you scared at all because people were dying in other communities?
No, I wasn't afraid of a wildcat back then.